You're coming with me. A vampire king found a human woman shivering at station, then took her home. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a bitterly cold evening in downtown New York, the kind of night where the wind bites through your clothes, and the streets seem deserted, save for the occasional hurried footsteps of a passerby trying to escape the chill. Alice stood at the bus station, her worn-out jacket barely keeping the cold at bay. She had no destination, no plan. Her hands were trembling, not just from the cold, but from the uncertainty of her life. Just an hour ago, she had lost her job, and the last of her savings had vanished on rent. There was no family to turn to, no friends left who could help. The only thing she had left was her pride, and tonight, that seemed like it would break too. As she stared out into the night, hoping for a bus to take her anywhere, but here, a figure emerged from the shadows. At first, she thought he was just another stranger, maybe a businessman out too late or someone trying to escape the city's grind. But this man was different. His presence was almost magnetic, pulling her attention without her realizing it. He was tall, well-dressed, wearing a dark coat that looked too expensive for this part of town. His eyes, when they locked with hers, were a deep amber, glowing with a strange intensity that made her heart skip a beat. Alice tried to look away, but it was impossible. It felt like something was pulling her closer, like she was caught in the gravity of a star. The man didn't speak immediately, but the cold in the air seemed to deepen when he stepped closer to her. "You look like you could use some help." His voice was deep, smooth, and strangely comforting, despite its low, almost commanding tone. Alice looked up at him, still shivering, unsure whether she should trust him. But what choice did she have? She was alone, cold, and afraid. I'm fine," she stammered, her voice shaking. The man raised an eyebrow, his gaze scanning her face like he could see right through her. "You're not fine," he said with a slight smile, the hint of something dark behind it. "Come with me. I can help you." Alice didn't understand why, but something in his voice made her want to follow him. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the overwhelming feeling of being lost in the world, but she found herself nodding slowly. Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're coming with me," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I have a place where you can rest. It's not safe for someone like you to be out here alone." His words sounded strange, almost too reassuring, but at that moment, Alice couldn't think of a better option. She hesitated for just a second longer, then let him guide her into the night, away from the cold and toward whatever fate awaited her. Little did she know, this night would change her life forever. As Alice followed him through the winding streets, her heart raced with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The man, whose presence was both calming and unsettling, walked ahead, his long coat swishing as he moved with an unnatural grace. It was as though he wasn't merely walking, but gliding through the night, a part of the shadows that clung to the city. Alice, shivering from the cold, struggled to keep up with his long strides, her mind a whirl of questions she couldn't quite form. The city around them felt quieter now, the usual hum of traffic and voices drowned out by the heavy silence that hung between them. She stole a glance at the man beside her, trying to catch a glimpse of his face, but his features remained hidden in the shadows of his hood. His hair, dark as midnight, framed his face in a way that made him seem almost ethereal, not quite of this world. The further they walked, the more Alice began to wonder if she had made a mistake. She didn't know who he was, or where he was taking her. But the alternative, standing in the cold alone, seemed far worse. Still, a nagging feeling in the back of her mind told her to be cautious. "Where are we going?" Alice asked, her voice tentative. "You'll see soon enough," he replied, his tone warm but distant. "Trust me, you're safe." His words were meant to reassure her, but they only made her more uneasy. How could he promise her safety when she knew nothing about him? She glanced around again, but there were no signs of life. No cars, no pedestrians, just the dark alleys and empty streets that seemed to stretch on forever. A few more steps and they arrived at a large, imposing building that Alice could barely make out in the dim light. The structure looked ancient, its stone walls weathered with age. There was something about it that didn't sit right with her, but she couldn't put her finger on it. "This is where you'll be staying for the night," he said, his voice soft as he pushed open the heavy doors. The inside of the building was nothing like Alice had expected. It was grand, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch into infinity. The air inside was warm, almost too warm, and smelled faintly of old wood and incense. It was a strange contrast to the cold night air outside. As they walked through the hallway, Alice's eyes wandered, taking in the strange, almost otherworldly decor. There were portraits of people she didn't recognize, their eyes following her every move. The walls were adorned with elaborate tapestries that depicted scenes of battles, strange creatures, and landscapes that seemed far removed from anything she had ever seen. She was so lost in the surreal beauty of the place that she almost didn't notice when the man stopped in front of a door. "This will be your room for the night," he said, his hand resting on the handle. Alice hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what to expect, but she didn't want to seem ungrateful. The warmth of the room was inviting, and the thought of being inside, away from the cold, was tempting. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As she stepped inside, she was met with a room that looked like something out of a dream. The bed was large, covered in velvet linens that shimmered in the dim light. There was a fire, crackling in the fireplace, casting a soft glow across the room. The windows were tall, framed with heavy curtains that were drawn back to reveal a view of the city skyline. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong somehow. The room, like the rest of the building, had an air of mystery, as if it were part of a world she didn't belong to. She turned to thank the man, but he had already disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone in the room. The door clicked shut behind her, and she was left standing in the silence. The warmth of the room was starting to feel oppressive, and Alice couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She moved to the window, staring out at the city below, her thoughts racing. What had she gotten herself into? She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. I was still standing by the window, trying to make sense of the situation when the sound of the door opening behind me made me jump. I quickly turned around, expecting to find the man, the mysterious stranger, but it was not him. A woman stood in the doorway, her presence commanding and elegant. She was tall, with long, dark hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her dress was a deep shade of crimson, a color that seemed to shimmer in the flickering light of the fire. She regarded me with an expression I couldn't quite read, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You must be the girl," she said, her voice smooth, almost melodic. "I trust you're comfortable." I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of this woman. Yes, thank you," I replied hesitantly, unsure what else to say. The woman stepped into the room, her presence filling the space as she moved gracefully. She walked over to the fire, warming her hands, before glancing at me again. "He doesn't usually bring people here," she remarked, almost as if to herself. I felt a shiver run down my spine at the mention of him, the man who had taken me here. Who was he? And why had he brought me to this strange place? Who is he? I asked before I could stop myself. The woman's eyes softened, but only slightly. "He's someone you don't want to know too much about, at least not yet," she replied cryptically. "But don't worry. He's not the monster some people think he is." Her words were oddly reassuring, yet they only raised more questions in my mind. Who was this man? And why did she speak of him in such a strange way? She seemed to sense my confusion and offered a small smile. "I'm Adeline," she said, finally breaking the silence. "I take care of things around here. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." I nodded, not entirely sure what to make of her. She was clearly used to being in charge, her every movement filled with authority and confidence. "Thank you," I said quietly, still unsure how to navigate this bizarre situation. She gave a slight nod and turned to leave, but not before glancing back at me. "Don't get too comfortable," she said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "Things here aren't what they seem." With that, she exited the room, leaving me alone once again. The fire crackled in the hearth, the only sound filling the silence that had settled over the room. I sat down on the bed, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Who was this man, really? Why had he brought me here? And what did Adeline mean when she said things weren't what they seemed? I had so many questions, but no answers. I wasn't sure how much longer I could stay here, in this strange place, without knowing more. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but for some reason, a part of me wasn't ready to leave just yet. Maybe it was the warmth of the fire, or the soft bed beneath me, or maybe it was the mystery surrounding the man who had taken me in. But something about this place, about him, felt different. As I lay back on the bed, staring up at the ornate ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something big, something that would change my life forever. Little did I know, the man who had brought me here wasn't just a stranger. He was a vampire king, and my life, as I knew it, was about to be turned upside down. I woke up to the sound of the door opening again, the warmth of the room, the soft sheets beneath me, and the fire crackling softly in the corner made it hard to believe that everything from last night had been real. But the reality of my situation set in quickly as I sat up in bed, the strange feeling of being watched lingering in the air. I wasn't alone anymore. Standing in the doorway, just as I had expected, was the man who had brought me here. His presence filled the room, and for the second time, I found myself unable to look away. He was even more striking up close, his features sharp and his posture regal. His amber eyes glowed faintly in the low light, and his dark clothes made him appear as though he belonged to another time, another world. I swallowed nervously, unsure of how to greet him, or if I should even try. "Good morning," he said, his voice as deep and commanding as I remembered. His gaze softened just slightly as he looked at me, but it didn't ease the tension building in my chest. "I trust you slept well." I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. "Yes, thank you. But I still don't understand. Why am I here?" The question had been hanging on the tip of my tongue since I first stepped into this house, but now that I was face to face with him, I felt almost afraid to ask. He stepped closer, his movements fluid and almost predatory, but not in a way that felt dangerous. It was as if he was part of the shadows themselves. "You're here because you need protection," he said, his voice low, almost as if he were revealing something important. "There are people who would harm you, people who would not hesitate to take advantage of your situation. I am here to ensure that doesn't happen." His words didn't make sense to me at first. I wasn't sure what he meant by protection. Who would want to harm me? I was just a regular woman, struggling to get by. "But I don't understand," I began, my voice shaky. "Why me? Why did you choose to help me?" He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze intense, as if weighing something deep inside. Then, with a sigh, he sat down across from me, his posture more relaxed now. "There's something special about you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Something that you don't even realize yet." His words felt like a riddle, and I could feel the confusion growing in my mind. "What do you mean? What do I have that makes me special?" He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "It's not something that can be explained easily. But trust me when I say that you've just stepped into a world far different from your own." His words hung in the air like a mystery I couldn't solve, but I knew there was more to this than I could understand. The quiet tension in the room made me realize I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. "Who are you?" I asked, unable to hold back anymore. "What do you want from me?" He paused for a moment, his gaze flickering slightly, and then, with a faint smile, he stood up and walked toward the window. The city skyline was just visible outside, a stark contrast to the strange world I now found myself in. "I am someone who has lived for far longer than you can imagine," he said, his voice distant. "I am a vampire, and I am the king of my kind." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Vampire? King?" I blinked, unsure of whether I had heard him correctly. "A vampire?" I whispered, almost to myself. He turned back to look at me, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "And I've chosen to help you. Because, like I said, there's something about you." The weight of his words pressed down on me, and I couldn't deny the sense of disbelief that was rising in my chest. Was this real? Was I really sitting in a room with a vampire king? It seemed impossible. But why bring me here? Why not just leave me alone? I asked, the fear creeping into my voice again. He walked back toward me, stopping just a few feet away. His presence was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but feel small and insignificant in comparison. "Because," he said, his tone dark and serious, "you are now a part of my world. And once you're in it, There's no turning back. His words sent a chill down my spine. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into, but I knew one thing for sure. My life was about to change in ways I couldn't possibly understand. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this place, and about him, was more than I could handle. I sat there, staring at the vampire king, trying to process his words. A vampire. A king. It was impossible. Yet, somehow, as I looked at him, I could see it. There was something otherworldly about him. The way he carried himself, the power in his eyes, the cold aura that surrounded him. It was all so surreal. So what now? I finally asked, my voice trembling slightly. He stood by the window, looking out at the dark city beyond. His back was to me, but I could feel his presence like an unshakable force. He didn't turn to face me, but his voice cut through the silence, deep and calm. Now, you stay here. There's no turning back, remember? He spoke in a way that left no room for argument. You've already crossed into my world, and there are consequences to that. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. My heart pounded as the reality of the situation began to settle in. I had no idea what kind of consequences he was talking about. I don't understand, I whispered, feeling the cold chill creep into my bones again. Why me? What am I supposed to do here? I don't belong in this world. He turned slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of his sharp features. You think you don't belong? His voice had a hint of amusement, though there was no humor in it. You belong here more than you think. This world has been waiting for you, and now that you're here, you'll find your place. But you're not just a visitor, Alice. You are part of this world now, whether you like it or not. I felt my chest tighten at the sound of my name slipping from his lips. The way he said it, so effortlessly, made it sound like he had known me forever. It was as if everything about me, all my fears, my doubts, were already known to him. But what do I have to do with this world? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the city below, his posture relaxed yet tense. I'm not just a king because of power, Alice. I'm a king because I have a responsibility, a duty to protect this world and everything in it. And that includes you. The words left me stunned. Me? I repeated, my voice faltering. Why? What do I have to do with any of this? He turned to face me fully now, his eyes intense and unreadable. There are forces at play here that you can't even begin to understand. You're connected to something ancient, something powerful. And your presence here, in my world, is no accident. You've been chosen. My heart skipped a beat. Chosen? I echoed, still not comprehending. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something that I should have known all along. Yes, chosen. By fate. By the very nature of your being. His words were cryptic, and the more he spoke, the more confused I became. I don't understand, I admitted, my voice shaking. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to fit into this world? The vampire king stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. He was standing right in front of me now, his gaze unwavering. You're going to learn, he said, his tone both firm and gentle. In time, you'll understand your place here. But first, you have to trust me. I could feel the weight of his words, and for some reason, despite all the confusion and fear, I wanted to trust him. I didn't know why, but there was something in his voice, in his eyes, that made me feel safe, even if I knew deep down that I shouldn't. How can I trust you? I asked quietly, looking up at him, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached out, his hand gentle but firm as he cupped my face. Because I'm the only one who can protect you, Alice, he said softly. From everything that's coming. And from everything that's already here. His touch sent a strange warmth through me, and I realized, then, that there was no going back. No matter how much I resisted, no matter how much I tried to deny it, I was already in too deep. This world, this vampire king, was now my reality. And somehow, I knew that my life, as I had known it, would never be the same again. I woke up the next morning to the sound of footsteps outside my door. The warmth of the fire had already faded, leaving the room colder than I had remembered. I sat up slowly, the weight of the previous night's conversation still heavy on my mind. I had barely slept, too many thoughts racing through my head. What had he meant by chosen? And what kind of world was I really in? My head was spinning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. I hadn't even had the chance to fully process everything when the door opened and the man, the vampire king, stepped inside. His gaze was intense as always, his eyes scanning the room before settling on me. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice still holding that commanding tone, though there was a hint of concern beneath it. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was all right. I wasn't sure about anything anymore. I think so," I replied, my voice shaky. "I just don't understand. Everything happened so fast. One moment I'm at a bus station, the next I'm here, and now I'm supposed to believe that I'm part of some world I know nothing about?" He stood still for a moment, watching me carefully, before he spoke again, his voice softer this time. "I understand this is overwhelming, Alice. But everything you've experienced, everything that's happened so far, has led you here. You don't have to understand everything right away, but you must trust that you're here for a reason." His words were meant to comfort, but they only left me with more questions. "What reason?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "There's something in you, something unique, something that ties you to this world," he said, his voice low and intense. "You've been marked, Alice. And that mark is more than just a symbol. It's a power, a connection to a lineage that goes back centuries." The words didn't make sense to me, but I didn't argue. I had heard enough to understand that this wasn't just some fantasy or delusion. This was real, and whatever was happening to me, it was real too. "What does it mean? This mark?" I asked, my heart pounding. He looked at me for a long moment, as if considering how much he should reveal. Finally, he spoke. "The mark means you are tied to the ancient bloodlines. You are connected to the very heart of this world, Alice. Your arrival here wasn't a coincidence. The forces that govern our kind knew that you were coming, even before you did." I shook my head in disbelief, trying to process everything he had said. "I don't even know what you're talking about," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I'm just a girl who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. This doesn't make any sense." He reached out, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I'm not asking you to understand everything right now. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that I'm here to guide you, to protect you. Because there are forces out there, Alice, that would use you for their own gain. And they won't stop until they get what they want." His words sent a chill down my spine. "What forces? Who were they? And why me?" "But why me?" I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. "Why am I so important?" He paused, his gaze softening. "You're important because you are the key," he said, his voice low but firm. "You have a power inside you, a power that could change everything. You've been chosen because you have the ability to unlock that power. And when you do, everything will shift. Everything will change." My heart raced at his words. What was he talking about? I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel like anything special. But something in his gaze, the way he looked at me, made me believe that he was telling the truth. He stepped back, letting his hand fall from my shoulder. "For now, all you need to do is rest, and trust that things will become clearer in time. But you must be ready. The world is changing, Alice, and you have a role to play in it." I felt my breath catch in my throat as his words sank in. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew one thing. My life had already been turned upside down, and there was no going back. The man who had brought me here wasn't just a stranger. He was a king, and he believed I was part of something far bigger than myself. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. The mansion was silent, almost eerily so. I hardly saw the Vampire King, except for brief moments when he checked in on me. It was clear that he had his own responsibilities, things that kept him busy, but he always made time to remind me that I was here for a reason, and I still had no idea what that reason was. Adeline, the woman I had met when I first arrived, was the only one who seemed to offer any explanation. She had been kind, though distant, but I noticed her watching me more carefully these past few days, almost like she was waiting for something to happen. One evening, as I sat by the fire, trying to lose myself in the warmth of the flames, she came to find me. "Come," she said, her voice commanding yet soft. "It's time you understood more." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Time I understood more? More of what? But I didn't ask questions. I followed her as she led me through the winding hallways of the mansion. The place was grand, ancient even, filled with paintings, artifacts, and symbols I couldn't begin to understand. Every corner of this place seemed steeped in history and mystery. Finally, we arrived at a large door at the end of a long corridor. It was made of dark wood, intricately carved, and had a strange symbol etched into the surface. This is where you'll learn, she said, looking at me with a strange intensity. Everything you need to know about your place in this world, your connection to it. She opened the door, and I followed her inside. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a series of candles arranged on a table in the center of the room. Surrounding the table were ancient books, their leather covers cracked and worn, and various strange objects I couldn't identify. In the center of the room, there was a large, ornate chair, and as I stepped inside, I realized that it wasn't just a chair, it was a throne. A throne that seemed to call out to me. Sit, Adeline instructed. This is where you'll begin your understanding. Hesitant but curious, I sat down. The moment I did, I felt a strange rush of energy course through me, as though the very air around me had changed. My heart raced, and I could feel the blood rushing through my veins. What is this? I asked, panic rising in my chest. Adeline looked at me, her face unreadable. This is where the bloodlines connect, she said quietly. Where your connection to the ancient powers is revealed. I looked at her, confused. The bloodlines? Powers. She nodded slowly. You are part of a lineage that goes back centuries. Your family, your ancestors, have ties to the vampire world, to the power that flows through it. And now, you're here, part of it, whether you like it or not. Her words were a blur, but they were starting to make sense in a way. The connection, the power she was talking about, it was real. And I was a part of it. The idea of being part of something so old, so powerful, felt both thrilling and terrifying. But how do I fit in? I asked. How am I supposed to use this power? Adeline gave me a long, steady look. You will learn in time, she said. But first, you must understand your place in the world. Your purpose here. I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. I had no idea what my purpose was, and I didn't know if I was ready to accept this new reality. But as I sat there, in the throne, surrounded by the ancient knowledge of this place, I realized that there was no going back. This world, this power, it was mine now. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. My life was never going to be the same again. Now, listen carefully, Adeline said, snapping me out of my thoughts. The Vampire King, the man you've come to know, is not just any man. He is the ruler of a world you've just begun to understand. And you, Alice, are more important to him than you realize. Her words sent a jolt through me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice tight with fear and curiosity. She stepped closer, her expression softening. He is bound by duty, by the weight of the throne, but he has his reasons for bringing you here. And those reasons are connected to you, to your bloodline. I opened my mouth to ask more, but she stopped me with a raised hand. All in. Good time, she said. But for now, know this. You are not just a witness to this world. You are a key player. Your choices will shape everything to come. I didn't know what to think of her words, but I understood one thing clearly. I was in the middle of something much bigger than I could ever have imagined, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I woke up to the sound of something soft tapping on my door. The night had been uneventful, though filled with strange dreams that I couldn't quite remember. Still, the unease I felt from my new reality had not dissipated. I had spent the last few days trying to understand what it meant to be a part of this world, but nothing seemed to make sense. I was sitting in an unknown realm, where everything was strange and overwhelming. I hadn't had much time to think about my old life, mostly because I was too scared to. I wasn't sure if I wanted to face the reality of what I had left behind. The knock came again, a little louder this time. I stood up and walked over to the door, opening it cautiously. To my surprise, it was the Vampire King, standing in the hallway, dressed in his usual dark attire. His presence was as commanding as ever, and for a moment, I couldn't find the words to speak. You're ready, he said, his voice deep and certain, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Ready for what? I asked, my voice sounding more uncertain than I intended. He stepped into the room, his gaze locking onto mine. There was no trace of the warmth I had seen the other night. His eyes were focused, determined, as though there was something important on his mind. For what comes next, he replied. There are those who will come looking for you soon. You need to be prepared. I frowned, my mind racing. What do you mean? Who is going to come for me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the large window that overlooked the dark cityscape. There are many forces at play in this world, Alice. Some of them you've already met. Others, you haven't yet. But they will find you. His words were cryptic, and I felt the familiar sense of dread begin to creep back into my chest. I wasn't sure who these forces were, but I had a feeling that I wasn't going to like meeting them. What do I need to do? I asked, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. The Vampire King turned to face me, his expression hardening. You need to learn to control what's inside you, he said, his tone more urgent now. There's power in you, Alice. A power that can either save or destroy, and I need to make sure you're ready to wield it. How do I do that? I asked, barely able to keep the fear from my voice. I had no idea what he was talking about. A power inside me. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel like anything special at all. That's why I brought you here, he said simply, stepping closer. You are a part of this world now. You've been chosen, and the first step is learning what it means to be part of it. He looked at me, his gaze unwavering, as though he were waiting for something. I wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but something about the way he stood there, so certain of everything, made me hesitate. How do I learn? I finally asked. I will teach you, he said. But you must be willing to listen. You must be willing to accept what you are, Alice. This power, this world, it's not something you can walk away from. Once you embrace it, there's no turning back. His words were heavy, and the weight of them pressed down on me. I felt a chill run through me. There was no going back. I was already in too deep. I'm not ready, I whispered, more to myself than to him. None of us are ready, he replied. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here. And now, you have to step up. You have to learn to control your power, to understand your place in this world. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. You're not alone in this, Alice, he said. You never were. But you must trust me. Trust that I am guiding you toward what is necessary for your survival. I didn't respond, the words catching in my throat. What was this power he kept talking about? And what did it mean for me? I was about to find out. As he closed the door behind him, I stood there, alone again, feeling both more lost and more certain than I ever had before. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew one thing. I couldn't back out now. The world I had stepped into was far bigger than I could have imagined. And the Vampire King was right. There was no turning back. I spent the next few days grappling with the reality of my situation. The Vampire King had made it clear that I was no longer a passive observer of this world, but an active participant, and that terrified me. I had no idea how to control the power inside me, nor did I fully understand what it was. All I knew was that it was connected to this world in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. One evening, as I walked through the mansion's grand hallways, I found myself thinking back to the night I had arrived. The fear, the confusion, the sense that I was caught in something far too big for me to handle. It all felt so distant now, yet still so close. The mansion had become my strange new home, and the Vampire King's presence was always looming, even when he wasn't physically there. He had told me I would learn, that I had to trust him, but trusting him didn't come easy. The thought of having power, of being part of something so much darker and older than I could understand, unsettled me. But I couldn't deny the pull, the strange attraction I felt toward him, and the way his words seemed to carve a path that led me deeper into this world. As I wandered the mansion, I finally came across him again. This time, he was in a library, the shelves stacked high with ancient books and scrolls. The air smelled of old paper and dust, a sharp contrast to the cold elegance of the rest of the mansion. He was standing by a large wooden desk, his back to me as he flipped through a thick book. Alice, he said without looking up, as though he had known I was there the whole time. You're finally here. I need you to learn something. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? What do I need to learn? I asked, suddenly feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. He turned slowly, his gaze locking with mine, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. His amber eyes were so intense, so piercing, that they seemed to strip away all the walls I had built around myself. The world you've stepped into is not just full of power, he said, his voice low. It's full of danger. And that danger will come for you if you aren't prepared. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. But I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. How do I fight it? How do I even begin to understand what's happening? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You don't fight it, Alice, he said softly. You embrace it. Embrace it. I repeated, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. What does that mean? He gave me a small, almost imperceptible smile. It means you have to learn to harness the power within you. You must stop resisting and let it flow through you. Only then will you understand your place in all of this. But what if I don't want this power? What if I don't want to be a part of this world? I asked, my voice cracking. His expression softened, but only slightly. You don't have a choice. You were chosen for a reason, Alice. And I'm here to help you discover why. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I never asked for any of this, but something about the way he spoke stopped me. It was as if his words were an undeniable truth, something that had always been and would always be. You think you can live a normal life after this? He continued. After discovering who you really are? You can't, Alice. That life is gone. The weight of his words crushed me. For the first time, I realized he was right. There was no going back. No matter how much I wanted to deny it, I had already stepped into a world that I couldn't just walk away from. And as much as I hated it, as much as it scared me, I had to accept it. So what do I do now? I asked, feeling completely lost. He smiled again, this time a little more reassuring. You learn, he said. And when the time comes, you'll know what to do. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed him. How could I believe that I had a role to play in this dark, ancient world? But as I looked into his eyes, I felt something stir inside me. A connection, a bond that I couldn't explain but felt with every fiber of my being. You're not alone, Alice, he said, almost as if reading my mind. And I'll be here to guide you. For some reason, his words gave me a sense of comfort, even as the uncertainty and fear lingered. I wasn't sure what the future held, or what kind of power lay within me. But in that moment, standing in the dim light of the library, I knew one thing. My life was no longer my own. I had been chosen, and there was no turning back. I spent the next few days in a strange, dreamlike state. Each morning I woke up in the mansion, surrounded by beauty and mystery, yet the constant feeling of unease never left me. The Vampire King's words had echoed in my mind. You were chosen for a reason. But no matter how many times I asked myself why, I still couldn't understand what he meant. I had tried to ignore the growing tension in my chest, the pressure to understand something I wasn't ready for. But as each day passed, it became harder to ignore the feeling that something was coming, something that I had no control over. That morning, the door to my room opened, and there stood the Vampire King once again. He had been quieter these last few days, leaving me to my thoughts, but now he was back, his expression more serious than I had ever seen it before. It's time, he said, his voice carrying the weight of something important. I froze, unsure of how to respond. Time for what? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. He motioned for me to follow him. Reluctantly, I did, unsure of what to expect. The hallway seemed darker than usual as I walked beside him, the air heavy with tension. We didn't speak as we moved through the mansion, and I couldn't help but feel that every step I took was bringing me closer to something I wasn't prepared for. We reached a large set of double doors at the far end of the mansion, doors I hadn't noticed before. The Vampire King placed his hand on the ornate handles, pushing them open. Beyond them was a grand, circular room, unlike anything I had seen before. The walls were lined with ancient tapestries, and the floor was covered with intricate rugs that seemed to tell stories from a time long past. In the center of the room, a massive stone circle lay embedded in the floor, surrounded by candles that flickered with an unnatural flame. This is where it begins, he said softly, his voice low and reverent. I stepped into the room, feeling a strange energy radiating from the stone circle beneath me. It was as if the very air around me was alive, pulsing with power. I looked back at him, my heart racing. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He gave me a long, assessing look, and for a moment, I thought I saw something softer in his eyes. You've been training for this your entire life, Alice. You just didn't know it yet. I felt a surge of confusion. Training? I thought. I hadn't been training for anything. But before I could ask anything more, he continued. The power inside you has always been there, but now is the time to awaken it. You must learn to control it, to let it flow through you. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. What if I can't control it? I asked, my voice trembling. Then it controls you, he replied simply. And that's something neither of us wants. He stepped closer, and I felt his presence like a weight pressing down on me. His hand hovered over the stone circle, and with a single gesture, the candles flickered brighter. Step into the circle, he instructed. And trust yourself. My heart pounded in my chest, but I did as he asked. Stepping into the circle felt like stepping into another world entirely. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the power around me intensified, and I felt something stirred deep inside me, something ancient, something wild. It was as if the very ground beneath me was alive, connecting with me, pulling at the core of my being. I gasped, trying to steady myself, but it was as if the power was overwhelming every part of me. Breathe, the Vampire King's voice called out, calm and firm. Focus. This power isn't your enemy. It's a part of you. His words were like a lifeline, grounding me. I focused, pushing aside the panic that threatened to take over. The power swirled around me, and I reached out with my mind, my heart, trying to make sense of it. Slowly, the swirling energy began to settle, and I felt a strange warmth spread through my body, filling the hollow spaces in my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt connected. Good, the Vampire King said, his voice low with approval. You're beginning to understand. The power is yours, Alice. But you must learn to control it, or it will consume you. I nodded, the weight of his words settling in my mind. I'm ready, I said, though I wasn't sure if I truly was. But I had no choice. This was my reality now. This power, this world. It was mine to understand, whether I was ready or not. The Vampire King stepped back, his gaze softening slightly. Remember, Alice. Trust yourself. Trust the power inside you. As the last of the candles flickered and the power around me slowly calmed, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't sure what it was, but for the first time, I felt as though I could begin to understand my place in this world. And I had a feeling that the journey ahead would be more dangerous and more powerful than anything I had ever imagined. I stood still in the center of the stone circle, trying to steady my breath as the last remnants of power faded into the air. The Vampire King had told me to trust myself, but that was easier said than done. The overwhelming surge of energy that had rushed through me was still fresh in my mind, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I glanced over at him, finding him watching me closely. His gaze was sharp, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Approval, maybe. Or was it anticipation? Well done, he said, his voice deep, almost reverent. You're starting to understand the power inside you. I took a shaky breath, trying to grasp what had just happened. The power, what was it exactly? How could I control it? But how do I know it's really mine? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. How can I be sure I can control it? He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving mine. You will never be fully sure, Alice. That's part of the process. The power isn't something you can just know. It's something you feel, something you become in tune with. He paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words. It takes time, patience, and trust. Trust in yourself, and trust in what you can become. I nodded, though the fear inside me was far from gone. I don't know if I'm ready for this, I admitted, my voice quiet. I've never been this person before. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this. You don't have to be ready right now, he replied, his voice firm. No one ever is. But you're already here, Alice. And now you have to step forward. That's all that matters. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. Step forward into what? He smiled then, a small but knowing smile. Into your purpose. Into your future. I felt a chill run down my spine as he said that. My future. This world. The power inside me. It all seemed so overwhelming, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure of whether to leap or step back. What happens now? I asked, my heart racing. Now, he said, his tone more serious. You prepare for what's to come. There are forces out there, powerful forces, that won't just sit by and let you walk into this world without a fight. The sense of dread that had been growing in my chest returned, stronger this time. What forces? I whispered, the question coming out before I could stop it. There are factions in the vampire world, factions that want to use your power for their own gain, he said, his eyes darkening. They see you as a weapon, Alice. A tool to be controlled. And some of them would kill to get their hands on you. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wasn't just a part of this world. I was a target. But I don't even know how to use this power, I said, panic creeping into my voice. How am I supposed to fight anyone when I don't even understand what's inside me? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You won't have to fight alone, he said, his voice low and reassuring. You have me, Alice, and you'll have others who will help you. But you need to be ready. When the time comes, you must act. No hesitation. The weight of his words settled in my chest, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I was strong enough. But somehow, his words gave me a sense of resolve. I had no choice. I had to find the strength inside me. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Now, you begin to train, he said, his tone firm again. We'll start with the basics. You need to learn to control the power, to make it your own. And that means you have to trust in yourself. Only then will you truly begin to understand what you can do. I nodded, taking in his words. The path ahead wasn't clear, and it terrified me. But there was something else, a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt before. For the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't just a bystander in my own life. Maybe, just maybe, I could be more. Let's begin, I said, my voice steadying as I spoke. The Vampire King looked at me, a glimmer of something approving in his eyes. Good, he said. Now, the real training begins. And just like that, I knew that this was only the start. There was so much more ahead of me. Power, danger, betrayal, and I had no idea how it would all unfold. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the person I had been. And whatever the future held, I was going to face it head on. I woke up the next morning with a sense of determination I had never felt before. The Vampire King's words from the night before still echoed in my mind. The real training begins. As much as I was terrified by the unknowns of this world, there was something inside me now, something that pushed me to step forward, to embrace what had been thrust upon me. I couldn't go back to the life I once knew, not now. Not after everything I had learned, everything I had felt. I could hear footsteps outside my door, and I knew it was him before I even saw him. The Vampire King had been giving me space, allowing me to process everything, but now it was time to move forward. He didn't knock, he never did. Instead, the door opened slowly, and there he stood, as commanding and enigmatic as ever. Get ready, he said simply, his voice as steady as it always was. Today, we begin the first lesson. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood up, the weight of what lay ahead heavy on my shoulders. I had no idea what I was about to face, but somehow, that made it all the more urgent. I couldn't delay this. What are we doing? I asked, my voice a little shaky. He gave me a faint smile, a ghost of one. You'll see. With that, he led me through the familiar hallways of the mansion, his steps purposeful. We didn't speak much during the walk, the silence hanging heavy between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, though. It was as if we both understood that this moment was important, that words weren't needed. We stopped in front of a set of large double doors I hadn't noticed before. They were different from the others in the mansion, carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift in the low light. The Vampire King placed his hand on the door, pushing it open with ease. On the other side was a large, dimly lit room, filled with tall shelves of books, strange artifacts, and odd symbols I couldn't decipher. The atmosphere was thick, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. This is where you will learn to control your power, he said, his voice almost reverent. Welcome to the training room. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the room, trying to take it all in. What do I do here? I asked, my voice quiet. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked over to a table and picked up an ancient-looking scroll. This is where you'll learn to focus your energy, he explained, unrolling the scroll in front of me. These are the first steps in mastering your power. You can't control it unless you learn to channel it. I stared at the symbols on the scroll, the markings unfamiliar and unsettling. How am I supposed to understand this? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. He looked at me with a knowing expression. You already do, he said. Softly. You just haven't realized it yet. The power is inside you. All I'm doing is helping you unlock it. I swallowed hard. The idea of controlling something I didn't understand terrified me. But I knew he was right. I couldn't keep avoiding it. I had to face this head on. What do I need to do? I asked, determination in my voice now. He smiled, pleased by my resolve. You need to meditate. Focus your thoughts. Quiet your mind. The power doesn't respond to fear. It responds to your will. I nodded, trying to steady my breath. I had never been one for meditation, never had the patience for it, but I didn't have a choice now. I had to learn. Close your eyes, he instructed. Focus on your breath. Feel the energy inside you. Don't push it away. Let it come. I obeyed, shutting my eyes and focusing on the rhythm of my breathing. At first, nothing happened. The silence in the room was deafening, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. But then, slowly, I felt something. A slight tingling at the edge of my awareness. A spark. I couldn't explain it, but it was there. I focused harder, drawing my attention inward, trying to make sense of the sensation. The Vampire King's voice broke through my concentration. "That's it," he said. "Don't force it. Let the power find its way. Let it flow." I felt a rush of energy inside me, wild and untamed. It was like trying to catch a storm in the palm of my hand. I gasped, feeling the power surge through my body, making my heart race. It was too much, too fast. "Focus," he said firmly. "Let it move through you. Control it. Control yourself." I clenched my fists, trying to steady myself. Slowly, I began to feel the energy calming, flowing more smoothly. The tingling became more of a hum, a steady pulse inside me, like a heartbeat. I wasn't sure if I was doing it right, but it felt right. "Good," the Vampire King said, his voice low with approval. "You're beginning to understand. It's not about force. It's about control." I opened my eyes, feeling both drained and invigorated. "It's different," I said softly, still trying to wrap my mind around the experience. "Different doesn't mean impossible," he replied. "It means you're learning." For the first time since I had stepped into this world, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could do this. I could control this power inside me. And that thought, though daunting, filled me with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was a part of this world, and I was beginning to understand my place in it. I stood in the training room, still feeling the echoes of the power coursing through me. The Vampire King had pushed me, guided me, and now I understood. Or at least, I thought I did. The last few days had been a whirlwind of discovery, of control, of learning to accept what I had become. There was no turning back now. I wasn't just Alice anymore. I was someone different. Someone connected to this world, tied to its darkness and its power. The Vampire King had shown me what I was capable of, but I knew there was more to learn. Much more. I had been training every day, working on harnessing the power inside me. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt like I was losing control, when the energy inside me threatened to overwhelm me. But with each failure came progress, and with each success came a greater understanding of what I was capable of. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. The thought of what I could do, what I could become, it was both terrifying and thrilling. "You're getting better," the Vampire King said, standing at the door of the room, watching me. His voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable hint of approval. "You've made significant progress." I didn't know how to respond. I was still trying to process everything. "I feel like I'm just scratching the surface," I admitted, turning to face him. "There's so much more I don't understand." He stepped into the room, his eyes narrowing slightly as he approached me. "There is always more to learn, Alice," he said, his tone softer now. "The more you understand, the more you realize how little you know. But that's how it is with power. It's limitless, and yet, it's always just beyond your grasp. Until you're ready." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "Ready for what?" I asked, my curiosity rising. He studied me for a moment before answering. "Ready for what's coming. The forces that are already aware of you. The ones who will stop at nothing to control you, to use you. They know who you are now, and they will come for you." I felt a shiver run down my spine at his words. I had known, deep down, that this wasn't just about control. It wasn't just about learning to master the power inside me. It was about survival. "What do I do when they come?" I asked, the fear in my voice slipping through despite myself. "You fight," he said, his voice suddenly fierce. "You don't let them take what is yours. You fight to survive, to protect what's yours." His words resonated with me in a way I hadn't expected. I had always been someone who avoided conflict, who ran from it. But this was different. This wasn't about avoiding the inevitable. It was about standing my ground. "I'm not ready," I said, the doubt creeping into my voice. "You will be," he replied firmly. "You don't need to be ready for everything, but you must be ready for what's ahead. It's coming whether you're ready or not." I swallowed hard, trying to push past the fear that was threatening to choke me. I had no choice but to face it. I had no choice but to face them. The forces he spoke of, the ones who would come for me. I couldn't outrun them. Not anymore. How do I fight them? I asked, my voice steadier now. With everything you've learned. With the power inside you. And with the strength you've yet to discover. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled in my chest. The fight was coming, and I had to be ready. The Vampire King stepped closer, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity one couldn't ignore. This is your path, Alice. You are part of something greater than yourself now, and you will have to fight for it. Fight for your place in this world. But you won't be alone. I met his gaze, and for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, but it wasn't as overwhelming. There was something else now, something stronger, resolve. I'll be ready, I said, my voice unwavering. I'll fight. He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Good, he said, his voice low. Then let's begin. And with that, I knew that everything was about to change. The world I had stepped into was not a world I could hide from. It was a world I had to fight for, a world where my strength, my power, would determine my survival. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer the person I had been. And whatever happened next, I would face it head on. I'm immersed in a world filled with power, mystery, and danger in this gripping tale of vampire stories. Alice, an ordinary woman, suddenly finds herself thrust into a supernatural world where ancient beings and dark forces threaten her very existence. With her newfound abilities, she must face the reality that she is no longer a bystander, but a key player in an age-old conflict. As the story unfolds, Alice must learn to control her power and survive in a world ruled by vampires, where betrayal and treachery lurk in every shadow. The journey is far from easy, as Alice faces challenges that test her strength and resolve, all while being hunted by those who want to use her for their own gain. The Vampire King, the mysterious figure guiding her, plays a central role in her transformation, offering guidance and protection as Alice learns to harness the power within. This story, filled with suspense and tension, explores themes of trust, survival, and the struggle for control in a world where nothing is what it seems. As Alice embraces her fate, she must navigate the perilous world of vampire stories, discovering the truth about herself and her place in this dangerous new reality. The twists and turns in this story will keep you on the edge of your seat as Alice battles the forces that seek to destroy her and finds herself changing in ways she never expected. In the end, it's not just about surviving. It's about discovering who you truly are in the face of unimaginable power. These vampire stories captivate the imagination with their dark allure, complex characters, and unexpected plot twists, making it a must-read for fans of the genre.